Recording in progress.
Say it out loud. Good evening and welcome to the January 13th, 2026 Portsmouth School Board meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order. Patty, can you please take the roll call?
Absolutely. Jen Shump.
Here.
Kip Clues. Steve Adler.
Here.
Byron Maddow.
Present.
Brian French.
Here.
Lisa Rappaport.
Here.
Nancy Clayberg.
Here.
Tish Campbell.
Here.
Lee Hudson. Eric Moore.
Here.
Nathan Delaney.
Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Does anybody have any announcements or recognitions?
Got a few for you, and maybe after I get going, maybe Mr. Moore can help me out. Although I haven't talked to him about it at all. So, so I just want to start by recognizing the Portsmouth High School visual arts students for an exceptional showing at the 2026 New Hampshire Scholastic Art Awards. This year, 36 PHS students earned a total of 40 awards, including 6 gold keys, 17 silver keys, and 17 honorable mentions. And this was across categories that included ceramics and glass, sculpture, printmaking, painting, drawing, photography, and mixed media. So good tribute to some very talented artists and a very strong art department. So I don't know if...
Cheers, that was good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Also wanted to just let people know and kind of thank Little Harbor School. They did some nice work recently around helping kids think about inclusion and accessibility. They've recently partnered, Sean McGrimley, the PE teacher at Little Harbor, partnered with Northeast Passage and did a day or a week of wheelchair opportunities for students in PE classes to experience what it is to try to get around and experience that. So it's I think a really thoughtful thing. I think it's something that Sean does periodically, and it was nice to see our students engage in those types of opportunities to think about those sorts of issues and be more inclusive and accessible, more inclusive in their thinking. Just in terms of some other stuff, Dundero will be doing a literacy night tomorrow night, the 14th. And that'll be an opportunity for family, students, and staff to come together, work on some literacy-based games. There's a guest author, and so good opportunity for folks to turn out to Dundero. And then just in terms of some quick heads up in terms of announcements, just a reminder for folks that Monday is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, no school for students across the district. And then Friday, which I believe is the 23rd, is a workshop day, which will include some parent conferences at some buildings. The 18th of February is an early release. February 23rd through the 27th is winter vacation. So just a couple of things.
Anyone else? I have one quick announcement. I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and offer our gratitude and thanks to our outgoing board chair, Nancy Clayberg.
Thank you.
You have served us so well over the last 4 years, always with good humor and a lot of attention to detail and a lot of ability to have your finger on the pulse of the community all over the place, all the time. You've done so many different roles for our government over the years that I don't know that I could list them all if I had to. But you have certainly served us very well, and I wanted to offer you some lovely swag that I must say came from Cause at the high school, who wouldn't miss a chance. We are so grateful for all of your service and so glad that you're still serving with us.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to be the chair and a pleasure. Lisa and Brian, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy.
That was very nice, very thoughtful. Thank you.
no other announcements, we will go to our consent agenda.
Actually,
Oh,
Lisa.
sorry, Tish, I didn't see
Sorry,
you.
my hand raising thing isn't working.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I did want to acknowledge the passing of Walter Novak. He was a principal at Portsmouth High and was worked for the Portsmouth School Districts for over 30 years, and he passed away on January 5th. I just wanted to acknowledge him, and you know, that's just kind of it. I know a lot of alumni had great things to say about him online, so I just wanted to recognize him.
Thank you.
That was very nice. I didn't know him. That was before my time, but I hear people, especially since his passing, so many people have said he was just an incredible person at Portsmouth High School. So apparently he certainly left a mark that, you know, will never be forgotten. So that was sad.
Thank you. Now we'll turn to the consent agenda. We have meetings from December 9th, 2025, and minutes from January 6th, 2026. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to approve the consent agenda items, minutes from December 29th, 25, and January 6th, 26.
Second.
Thank you. We need a roll call vote, Patty, because we have Zoom participants.
Yep.
Please.
Jen Shump,
Yes.
Pip Clues, Stephen Adler,
I abstain. I wasn't here on December 9th.
Byron Maddow,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Lee Hudson. Passed.
I would now like to open public comment. Do we have anybody? I see
We know that guy.
all the way in the back. Is anybody on Zoom who'd like to comment?
Checking.
We will close public comment for the moment and start our budget workshop session, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. You'll see that I left on all your spots here, there are 3 memos, and those memos address questions that you had last week when we met. We did our first preliminary look at the budget book. So those are pretty self-explanatory, they're pretty thorough. If you have any questions in regards to those, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Always accessible by email, whether I'm in the office or not. But these are pretty good explanations of the questions you had. And those in regards to specific issues, in regards to increases in insurance costs, as well as the other funds outside of the operating budget that you wanted to look at FTEs. I also put budget numbers in there as well. So that's included in there. So feel free to do that. Because you can see we're running a special on hole punches at the business office. There's a little bit extra on the side. I'm still trying to figure out the printer up there, but anyway, you should be able to put those right in your book if you want to keep it all organized. So, any questions on that?
I have a question. It's okay. Are we definitely working with school care again? Has that been decided yet?
Yes.
We are, okay.
Yeah,
Because that was the best situation for us.
correct. So with that, any other questions? Sorry. So with that in mind, I'm going to introduce my right-hand man, Mr. Ken Lynchy, in charge of our Director of Facilities and Grounds. He is going to go through a pretty thorough breakdown of what the Facilities Department does, maintenance, custodial, and the like, and he'll also give you an idea of a lot of the projects we have going on, so you can be aware of not only what's going on now, but what we've done in the past. I will go out there and preliminarily say that the work that Ken does for this district, as far as basically managing the projects, some of the large projects we have, as well as small projects, has saved this district probably hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. of what he's been able to do. So he's very valuable to me, very valuable to the district, and I value everything he brings to the table for us. With that,
Thank you. As Brian said, Ken Litchi, Director of Building and Grounds, Chair, Superintendent, fellow board members, thank you for having me. I'm going to put on my PowerPoint. I'm responsible for the 187 athletics, 188 operational, 189 energy, and then we use 190 right now is where the modular sits and a few other miscellaneous projects. I'm going to kind of brief summary through the slides. I believe you guys already have in the packet, so we can just try to move things along. As we get towards the end, I do bounce around a little bit because it just doesn't coincide of how to group them when we talk about from playgrounds to construction, things like that. But after that, answer any questions. We can give some other discussion pieces that are not on the slides as well, of where we are in some projects and how things are going to be moving forward. So if I do this right. There we go. All right. First slide, as we talk about, just kind of a quick overview of our schools, our custodial staff. Some are where the pictures of the individuals, our custodial staff, our plowing of the turf field, graduation as well. We are 31 members strong. 3 years ago, we were 9.5 custodians short. Right now, we're at 3. Slowly plugging in those holes as well right now. Kind of give you a responsibility of the department of what we oversee for building and grounds, the cleaning, capital projects, renovations. The size of the buildings in a whole is about 679,000 square feet. We oversee also the ground management, the athletic field setup and management, also the playgrounds, parking lots. So it's a broad range with the facility side, not only the custodial side. The guys are busy. I mean, there's plenty of work to do. There's always something to see, something to correct. So it just kind of gives you an ballpark overall of where we are on operational sides. In conjunction to that, we also look at sustainability. We also look at trash consumption. We look at composting. About 10 years ago, we looked at our trash, our waste, incorporated recycling into the elementaries harder, composting in the elementaries harder, where we've been able to reduce 1 dumpster at each elementary per week. So that's 24 yards of less trash that's going into a landfill, where our elementary schools are being only dumped once a week. So that's big to us. We've also tried to reduce the high school as well, where they have 2 dumpsters, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we've got it down to we've only dumped 1 dumpster. So now we're trying to start tracking that of how we can reduce. We're also now implementing out today, and we'll start in next week, brand new recycling bins and compost and trash bins throughout the school. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. But you also can see where we have solar panels, gardens, green gardens, rain gardens. We look at, certified EPA chemicals, papers, as we operate throughout the time. When I met with the budget with Zach this year and Brian, budget drivers, costs, as we all know since COVID, are up. Usage of our fields are up. We continue, even though it's great to have the rec community campus turf field as well, but we also in the spring have roughly 18 to 24 teams using all our fields, not only roughly 24 teams using our fields in the fall. So there's a significant amount of usage in our fields, and we're starting to see that the increase in the deep tining, the aerating, seeding, slicing, just so we can try to maintain. So when we start looking at those things, that's what's starting to drive some of the budgets as we look into that as well. It also gets into the facility side of our building operations, the day-to-days. We've coincided with the city about 10 years ago, so we piggyback all our contracts. We kind of use what we have and our needs are with conjunction of what Peter Rice and their city buildings to try to maximize our best price for a contracted service. But they're growing. They're climbing significantly higher than they were 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we could probably sell our plumber at $40, $45 an hour. Now we're at 102. And that's going out to the market for the best price we get. So we try to capitalize and maximize when we bring them in. However, it's still at a cost when we look at those type of services. Also, as we continue to see the aging of buildings, high school, which is, is running about 22 years now, 21 years, Nancy, 22 years, somewhere around 2004, 2005 when we finished that one. So we're starting to see an increase in actuators, damper controls, things like that. Some of those projects are put into the capital improvement plan, as you'll see later. But it also falls into life safety of electrical detectors, plumbing repairs, as I mentioned earlier as well. So we're starting to see an increase in those budget drivers for those facilities as well. And then last is the 189, the energy. As AC in New Franklin, high school is 75% AC, middle school is 100% AC. But we're starting to see the shoulder months. And we put our pricing out to bid for electrical use and gas usage with the city in conjunction to maximize our rates. However, we're starting to see the shoulder seasons to start to increase. So as some charts, we're starting to see some of the increases will start going up as well. So those are kind of a ballpark of what budget drivers we're seeing now. And then we monitor and trend and try to see where we can try to maximize or save as we throughout the year. And we'll do our best. High school in 2016, we installed a solar array. And I like to show this because it shows what we've generated for power. Generated equals to trees, water, gas as well, methane. This is a part of a PPA agreement with the city. We did water Madbury treatment plant as well. It's a no cost to the city of Portsmouth. Right now the contract is coming up on year 10, which I think allows us to explore the opportunity to purchasing the contract out in conjunction with Madbury Water. Peter Rice and I have talked a few times about that, and we'll continue to talk that to see where we stand and where we are cost-wise, if it's cost beneficial for the city to buy that out, because right now we don't maintain any of it. Unfortunately, we see the cost savings of that as well, but we do see the energy piece. And what I did here is I gave you a slide which shows you the kilowatt hours that we've generated since December of 2016, which really falls into 2017, just over 3 million kilowatt hours to date. And each year spikes differently. It depends on weather, snow, cloudy days. You know, there's all kinds of parameters. You can kind of see a consistent roll, but it gives you a good idea of where we are and what we've been generating over the years. As we jump into capital, this was presented through the planning board and the city council, and I believe it was put in your packet as well. It gives you, we have multiple pages in the capital plan. This first page here is kind of a generic of multiple projects. As we look through this one, it jumps into security upgrades, life safety, stone wall repairs, interior upgrades. This is a slide that we've been using for multiple years, allows us to do various projects that are above $50,000, which is part of the city requirement, but not beyond the millions. So it allows us to do a lot of little things through the capital process as well. It's worked well for us. And as you can see, we have out years. A year FY31, I have not placed anything in that year yet because there's some years, depending on budget cycles, I have to fluctuate and I have to adjust things. So I kind of left that year as a flex year to see where I need to shift depending on where we are in the next couple of years. But that line will definitely get filled in. As you know, there's plenty to do with Portsmouth schools.
Kenny, I was just going to say real quick, just that I think something for new members and then just the public always, the capital improvement plan is ultimately a plan.
Correct.
And it's not a commitment. It's not a formalized commitment to spend per se. So this is the plan, and then each year we come back around and the community, as a community, have a new discussion. And so any of those things that are in there could move around from year to year. And I just to emphasize what you were
so
just
it's
saying.
a 5-year plan, and each year we meet in August and we go through what I see and what we get for feedback of where the building needs or the athletic needs or site, and then we put that together and then we base it out. And then next year, sometimes it revolves, it changes, and then we readjust and we go from there as well. This slide here is the elementary renovation, and I'll talk a little bit more about the elementary timeline later on in the slide. But this is our slide where we have earmarked, in addition to the $3 million that was just approved for City Council for New Franklin School, the $5 million for this upcoming summer for FYI 27, and then the following summer, FY 28, for the additional $5 million, which I have a slide later on, as I stated, which will show the $13 million that we're requesting. On the tail end of that is another $500,000. I need to revert back to Don Darrow. As we did their windows, we were able to establish about 50% of that exterior building through ESSER and get all their siding done for free. But we just haven't been able to come up with the funds yet to kind of back and finish that. So we know that's a couple years out, but I want to at least get that onto the docket so that we can go back and finish that exterior of the building as well. CTE is coming up on their requirement of time for funding for allocation through the state federal process. So 2 years ago with Nathan, we put this slide in. Originally was for 10 million, earmarked 7 million for federal and state, 3 million for bonding. Is when I talk into my later slide, at some point over the next year, we'll have to start determining and soliciting RFQs out for qualifications for architects. So we can start working down what the program's looking to do, what the program needs are, what the direction of Portsmouth Schools is going to be going for CTE. So we can start establishing a footprint and a blueprint of where we're going to proceed moving forward and a potential cost. This is just temporarily what we're estimating at that. However, I'm also looking at the high school, and as we'll talk about that later as well, is looking at how we can piggyback the state funding to start working on the mechanical systems in Portsmouth High School and life safety of AC, dampers, controls, mechanisms as well. So that's why you see that 5 million, those 2 outer years as well. So we're trying to establish and maximize what we can for the state and also piggyback as what we can and also endorse into the projects to maximize what we can benefit for the students in schools in that part of the building and then carry that out through the rest of the building as well. There's been many discussions in the last 2 years, playgrounds. I have a slide later as well as I discuss when we talk about playgrounds, timelines, and where we are with Little Harbor. FY 26 was approved by City Council last year. We have spending that money as of right now of $600,000. This is now earmarked FY 27 for New Franklin and FY 28 for Don Darrow. So as we discuss later in a future slide, this is where our budget slide goes as well. This slide is new. I implemented it this year. I requested to the City Council. Part of roofs, part of paving has all been part of that first slide. When I look at that first slide, there's other items than that paving and roofing will take away from our needs, whether it's the walkway, the athletic fields, security, things like that. When I look at the square footage for roofs, I look at the square footage for paving, there are larger ticket items. And I felt warranted that it felt it needed its own page. And then we've introduced as a new page this year to City Council. So it allows us to better track our paving, better track our roofs, and what we're spending that as well. So this slide is new to City Council. And then last on the capital and rolling stock, this just gives you a tentative idea of our fleet. This is also part of the city rolling stock, part of their fleet plan of our equipment, our mowers, our vans, our trailers, things as well. We're looking to purchase, this is where the RJL van comes out. This is where on number 22 is where now we're putting in a van for the high school to try to help accommodate their programs and some of their needs and travel expenses as well, to try to alleviate from buses being rented and things like that. So that is in the books. We're just trying to look at, where can we get that? It's also got a athletic trainer, which is promoted this year. And we're also looking at a tiny mobile robot that paints athletic fields. Those are the kind of the up and coming things in athletics for all the towns. For us, we're looking as labor costs, having us to try to figure out how we can maximize our labor, where we can set the machine in a GPS mode, paint the field as the guy's mowing or trimming. He's just got to monitor the machine on paint. So I'm actually taking a guy and putting him back into the workforce as we have a robot doing it as well. So it's kind of cool to watch. So we're keeping our fingers crossed for that one as well. As we talked earlier, we continue to talk about safety, security for the buildings. This is kind of a good overview that I've given from 2002 when we started cameras in the high school for the first time and how we've implemented cameras, access control, active shooter trainings, physical assessments, upgrades. There's a numerous list of projects that were done here. I can honestly say that I'm very proud of that. I've been able to get almost $929,000 of free grant money. That's been no cost to the city of Portsmouth. We're just applied for round 4. Fortunately, it's a very limited amount, but we've implemented it towards the high school. We're looking at a blue light notification system with some additional funds to hopefully kind of implement that out. What that allows the staff to do is to activate, just like the fire alarm, it's a blue light that would give some type of notification wording out to staff, out to students, whether it's a shelter in place or, list for alternate information. So there's a bunch of various things that we can do with that type of notification as well. Pinkerton's starting to install it. I believe Londonderry's starting to do it as well. Concord's exploring it as well. So that's what we're going to look as we continue to do access control, cameras, doors, and things. We just got to continue to broaden our expectations, what the growth of the district as we move forward as well. So that's what we applied for there. If you have any questions, I can further detail on a few other things as well as we look it through for security. Did I do? No, one slide. Elementary renovation timeline. I like just to show this slide. I showed it last year with a lot of the talks of discussion of redistricting, how funding was established and distributed out to the elementary schools. As you look through, we started with New Franklin in 2002 and some in Dondero. In 2011 is when we started really looking at the elementary schools and exploring where their needs were, which is also in conjunction as the middle school project started up and running in renovation. Just like in 2002 to 2005, as the high school project got up and running, then we shifted into the middle school. Middle school shifted into the elementaries. But it gives you a good idea of capital funding that was fortunate to come from City Council through 2015, 16, 17, 18 as well. The mechanical upgrades were done in New Franklin, ESSER funding for Dondero, and then again it shows you 26, 27, and 28 of the $13 million for the New Franklin Elementary School. This is also the phase plan that we presented to you in the spring. It talks about how we're going to phase out the next 3 years. $3 million starting now. We are in the process of doing boring drills and site layouts and design work to understand where we are as we move into the addition off the New Franklin kindergarten classroom. And then we'll jump into phase 2, which is the addition towards Outback and some cosmetics in through the center and that as well. And then where we have to get 1 to 2 allows us in stage 3 to move the library off to the front of the school to allow us to incorporate that whole middle center support services room. It's similar to what we did at Dondero School. We kind of call it the suite. Kate calls it the suite. However Joanne wants to call it, we want to try to bring them all in together, get them out of little closet areas, hallways, doorways, things like that. But that'll bring them into more of a cohesive area where they can collaboratively work together and, be better benefit for the kids and students. That's also where that security entrance comes into play. It's one of those things that I can't take a classroom without giving a classroom. So this is where that last phase of the security entrance, as we've talked about for New Franklin School, comes into play. There's just no way around us to right now to try to put it ahead of it in phase 2 or phase 1 without having a disruption to the classroom, and that all depends on where we are with, student enrollment as well. As I said, a few slides here, we'll start bouncing around a little bit. Elementary Little Harbor Playground timeline. We have conceptual drawings. We are at 95% done with our drawings. Right now, we are in the wetland permitting process of shoreline with the state. Also with locals, we did a site local walkthrough last week. Over the next week or so, we call it turn the page. We will sit there with Aaron and Kristen and Peep and go page by page by page, just to make sure that we have everything that we're potentially looking for. Also potentially add-ons, adults, and deletes. As we know, playgrounds are not cheap. We plan on spending every single penny on this playground. In addition, maybe some additional paving funds that we're going to kind of look to kind of help on that part as well. Our goal is to look at demolition in April break. First day of school leaving is when construction starts, with hopefully wrapping it up within the week prior to school starting. We know there's a tight timeline Aaron's working with staff now to try to create an outdoor playground area plan concept of using the field across the school, going up to Cloud Field and using that baseball field or something up there. So we're trying to put those plans in place now so that it's not a shocker when we come in back from April break and there's no more playground. There's a big old fence sitting up there. It's like now it's a construction site. As we get into the construction of Little Harbor, then we'll meet with New Franklin School to try to get some of their thoughts, processes before they go away for the summer. So we can at least get that ball rolling a little bit so when we come back in the fall, we can establish that, get that ball rolling, and the same thing for Don Darrow. There's a lot of planning, just like with New Franklin. There's 2 playgrounds front and back. Little Harbor's got 1 front and back. So there's a lot of planning to do on our end as well. Project schedule for this summer, as you can see, it is any summer they're busy between the New Franklin phase, Little Harbor playground replacement, and PEEP. We're doing roofs at Don Darrow and the high school again. There's continued security work at all the schools. As I mentioned to you earlier, the CTE discussion. As part of the first $700,000, we're also looking to do upgrades in interior to the high school, some carpeting, stairwell treads. Have been an ongoing piece for the last 4 years. We pick a stairwell every summer, and we upgrade the treads as well. Again, the mechanical systems, and then we're looking at the athletic complex. Athletic complex was established in 1989. We've been very fortunate for what we've gotten out of that complex and as well used. So we're looking at fencing, some irrigation pieces, press box, a wide range of projects to continue to, enhance our athletic fields as we move forward. Just a quick summary of what we've done over the last 10 years, from pole vault to tracks to turf fields, chillers at the middle school, New Franklin schools, varsity dugouts, renovations, cameras. Kind of just gives us a broad range of multi-million-dollar projects that we continue to do throughout the year, and it continues to grow. And we're very appreciative of the funding that we've been able to get from City Council to complete these projects. This is kind of a typical summer workload. I kind of break it out per school. Kind of gives you an idea of, little miscellaneous things, not on top of all the cleaning the custodians do, on top of all the additional maintenance work that the guys do. It's also all these other little things that along of that previous guide of the scope of projects. There's also a bunch of miscellaneous things that we do to maintain and enhance our schools on a daily basis. And not only are these done during the summer, but we do them all throughout the year as well. But it kind of gives you an idea of where we are energy efficient. One of the bigger years this year is we were up for high pressure vessel inspections for our boilers. We're required to do that every 2 years. We pass those with flying colors. But again, it's just additional work that we have to prep for and work with our insurance carrier as well. My last slide, I like to do show and tells. We have a fencing for the rooftop garden for potential at the middle school one day. There's some Little Harbor playgrounds, interior, Don Darrow interior, our modular playground, New Franklin Mechanical, our tennis courts. For those who don't know, we just did a brand new lighting upgrade system at the high school last year in the gymnasium. By the click of the button, we can change it from 90% to 20% all web-based. We can put multiple programs in. It was a great system that we established. We're going to start branching that off into parking lot lights. We can start controlling our parking lights that way. And I believe we can start controlling our interior lights as we look into the renovations as well as the high school. We just finished an energy audit of the high school and middle school, where we are with lighting and transformers and things like that. So we can start now working towards them as energy as much as we can as well. And I don't have a slide for this one here, my last one, but in recent lieu of the last 2 months, we've been very fortunate to get a L here in City of Portsmouth Purchasing, lined us up with the person who expedited the closing of Liberty Mutual up in Dover. And as you saw in the conference room tonight, the tables, those come from them as well. We've been able to get 10 new cafeterias at the high school, 24 conference room tables. As I stated earlier, we're starting to influx brand new recycling compost bins throughout the high school, breakout space, cafeterias. We got 18 office chairs, 23 brand new whiteboards. In hindsight, at cost, we probably got about $100,000 for free, give or take. So we're very appreciative to have the opportunity to go up there and get that. and benefit Portsmouth schools. And 90% of it, by February break, will be all in service as well. So some of the stuff went right from the truck right into service. But the whiteboards, we're just looking at waiting for the high school break to say, okay, that's kind of a crummy board, we'll give her a new one or give him a new one, and we'll start plugging and playing some new whiteboards as well, besides the tables and chairs and things like that. So, as a quick overview, that's facilities. I can answer questions. We can continue to talk what questions you may have. I know that's a lot of information in a short period of time, but you can see that we love what we do, and
I'll just say really quickly, in this cycle, so far in the proposal you have, over the last 3 times, we have proposed a number 2 for Kenny. Kenny, all the stuff he's talking, you're looking at all these projects that are going on, but he also is managing the day-to-day, all the day-to-day custodial operation. I can tell you that when it is icy day and we're trying to figure out whether or not we're doing school, Kenny's in the truck at 3 in the morning, salting, and I'm checking with him to try to determine whether or not we're going to be in school that day. That position's not in here this time because we've had it rejected 3 times, but I would say that is always a conversation that we're open to, because I think Kenny is carrying the load of a couple people in the work that he does. And so what's so important is the stuff that he's kind of the project management level. What he's doing is essential in terms of making sure these projects run well, that things are overseen, that we are really thoughtful in the way in which we approach it. But then to flip around after you have all those thoughtful conversations, get up at 3 in the morning and hit the salt truck. It's more than what most people are doing. So if the board through this process ended up deciding to reintroduce that as a thing, you would not have anyone pushing back on you on the administrative side of the house.
Not at all. Not at all. As you can see, if I pulled an arrow, the truck's out front right now. So, thank you.
Questions?
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I had a few notes on here. So in 188 on the maintenance software, that seemed like a relatively significant jump from 13.5 to 21.5. Just a little bit more detail maybe on what's driving that particular jump.
So the maintenance software programs, we have a few programs we use we use 2 programs. One's called Operation Hero. It's our day-to-day work order system. So all teachers up in SAU 52 box, click on it, they can submit work orders. I had a slide on it. When I start looking at them at 22, 24, 25 slides, I took it off. I'm like, you guys have enough to see at the moment. So when I look at that, I carry the day-to-day operational maintenance on it. I carry a PM program on that as well. I carry a facilities rental as well on that. What we also added to this year that we've been kind of putting in from school budget to school budget is called NAV 360. It's our emergency operation website that we use. It's an app that we use for all staff members, where they can activate an intruder, a medical alert, alarms like that. So that increased that as I took that program out of all the individual schools that I was billing it from and put it where it belongs.
Okay. And then maybe I'll go to, so just sort of a curiosity, you mentioned, I think from one of your slides, I saw that like the electrical line items in operations for like the middle school and the high school are contract services?
So we contract electrical services for lights, ballasts, outlets, things like that. That's an insurance requirement. We contract out HVAC, high pressure vessels, as I talked about that. That's our boilers, piping replacing. We don't have a pipe fitter. We don't have an HVAC tech on staff. We have gentlemen who are knowledgeable, but they don't have that certification.
Okay.
We'll do a lot of the low-hanging fruit, like a drippy sink or like flush armator, but there's limited things that we can do without having a license as well.
Okay, so I think what I was just observing, this is maybe a dumb question, but the electrical line item at the middle school was like 8,600, and at the high school it's 38,000.
Yes, so.
The magnitude, yeah.
So the high school, it's based off, what we've noticed in the high school over the last few years is a lot of room ballast, a lot of room light changeouts as well. We've due to the age of the equipment, we're not able to get parts on some of the lights. So I just can't go ahead and, plug a brand new light in without having to rewire it. So we've been actually pulling out a whole classroom, bring a brand new lighting system, try to use those as spare parts as we move along that. When we look at our contracted rate, it's $70-something an hour times 2. That's about 4 days worth of work for 2 guys. So those are starting our increases as well. So when you start doing the math and we start doing all the other day operational pieces of lights, there's almost 13,000 bulbs in that one high school. I mean, granted, we change all the bulbs as much as we can. We try to alleviate that cost, but it just comes to a point that electrical services come into play.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm gonna keep going. So on the high school one again, the ventilation repair, and maybe this is just sort of like a process question. You mentioned, and I think I'm understanding this. Once things get above 50K,
So the guidelines from city council or from city manager or Nathan is when it gets above $50,000, that's where we put it into capital
Okay.
repairs. Other than that, we try to piecemeal, or what we can do is come into in-house, whether it's a VFD drive at $3,800 to a circulator. We just did a circulator pump this past fall at the high school. I want to show just shy of 19,000. It's a 30-horse motor. So these are where some of those increases. What line I think you see
Yeah.
there,
the 50K on the ventilation,
50 what?
50K for the ventilation repair.
Yeah, so that ventilation repair is going to cover the cooling coil on AHU3, which is roughly 39,000, but we're also going to piggyback on that same contract for a bunch of damper controls. The dampers are what modulates the air in and out, and as we live close to the ocean, we're seeing now a significant more rust into those mechanism parts as well. We just did a huge lubrication grease the last day we had early release to try to get them to work. So we're looking at, again, how can we piggyback a project to get biggest bang for our buck? And so that project there will come in for this summer.
Okay, I guess my question is like, at one point, I guess it's just inherent in this is that like the repairs are still small enough now where that wouldn't come out into CIP, but it seems like it's,
And if you look
yeah.
into the CTE slide,
Yeah.
that's where I've out-yeared $5
Right.
million and $5 million to start replacing and upgrading the air handler. At that time, we will evaluate, as Concord Schools is doing and a few others, are we going to AC or dehumidify?
Okay.
And that's a budget cost savings to the taxpayers, whether I put those AC components in or not. This is where we're looking at those as well, as we know the inner budget is climbing. A little, 5,000 here, 10,000 here, 1,000 here. As you stated, you can start seeing those.
Yeah.
Well,
So
and
now
that's,
we're putting that into the budget.
I was going to say, and that's I think one of the big differences, and you mentioned it when we were talking about the CIP. We're in the CIP project around CTE. When we originally just threw something in there in the out years, it was 10 million.
10
right?
million, yes.
We had 10 million with the assumption that 70% of that would be picked up by the state in terms of state funding, and 30% would be, locally bonded. But in this most recent version, we've added a bunch of money, and it's connected to trying to create that synergy around the HVAC, because part of what you're looking at is the beginning of HVAC failure. Already, the project the high school project, when the renovation happened, was incomplete. We never fully did the same type of air handling in the second floor where the foreign language wing is.
Foreign language, support services, music, art,
Yeah.
auto, half the CTE area.
I wasn't around 22 years ago. My understanding is we ran out of dough, and so we just didn't do that part of the project. So we had pieces we already needed to do to bring the building up to common space. But now, as you're getting into 22 some odd years down the road, some of those major pieces of HVAC equipment are starting to fail.
So, I guess, so then, post the CTE renovation and some of those things, hypothetically, some of these line items would be on the come down in terms of the ventilation repair and those sorts of things.
And you think that's fair, Kenny, at least in terms of the high school? What would
High school, yes, with any other budget, yeah, we look to how we can reduce the cost and operational.
Okay.
On the flip side of the statement is back in the day, Nancy was back then as some people thought that a bigger building would be cheaper to run, and that's not the case.
Yeah, I think that.
I had a simple question for you.
Yep.
Last year, there were multiple line items where they were reduced in the operating. I just wondered what the impact on that was for you, and if that happened again, what the impact would be if that was repeated.
It always impacts when you reduce. I understand that operations are kind of an easier reduction to assist where they need the funds for staff, paras, and teachers. I believe in the expenditure report, and I don't have it directly in front of me, I believe we're 250,000 over budgeted last year, and facility operation as well. So I continue to ask for those fundings I try to trend on where the expenditures are going, so we continue to see the growth and why, you should not be cutting the facility operational, because at some point it comes into a budget freeze. It depends on where my number comes and where the numbers are for budgets. So Brian and I, and with Zach, we continue to talk about the underfunded of the operational budget and how do we get to where it needs to be based off the services that we need to provide as well. It's always been a discussional piece every year. And we make sure that we can fully operate the schools and the operational needs that we need, even if I go over budget with explanations with Brian and with Zach. So we don't underfund a building, we don't not do a project. We try to, how do we move it along, how do we do it now, and then how do we continue to move forward as well.
But I think it's fair to say, and this has happened over multiple cycles now. And very often, correct me if I'm wrong, Kenny, I feel like we have one conversation at the board level, and then as we move out of the board proposal and we get to the next stage, sometimes when we are forced to make some additional reductions from what the board proposal is, one of the places that gets harvested are these things in your budget. Because, like you said, we're trying to save people. And so what we do is this. I think the concern is always deferred maintenance gets you eventually, and you're always playing with fire. And so I think Kenny does a great job. And like you said, in this case, we ended up overspending by a bunch this year because when Kenny comes to us and says, I'm sorry guys, but this is a priority at this moment, we need to do it, then we find ways to cannibalize other parts of the budget in order to make it happen, to get us through. But it's still putting us in a cycle of some percentage of ongoing deferred maintenance, which we just have to be really careful about.
And then we try to track it through capital or through my process. If you go to my office, I think I'm running 3 whiteboards right now with multiple pieces here as well.
It's a good thing you went to Liberty Mutual. We have more whiteboards you can use.
And also with the budget process this year, to give Zach an idea as well, is I presented another Excel sheet this year during my process when we talk about budgets, is what comes off the top, for contracts and services and asbestos inspections, just things that, not counting the bottom number, is what I take right off the top of the budget of things that we need to do. It's not an option. These are the process to maintain our schools, to be in compliance with the state and locals and things like that. So I think that this year kind of helped given that visual piece as well on top of the operational side. And sometimes the operational side, we can predict as much as we want. And then at the end of the day, sometimes we're focusing on this and then we go that way. It's just the nature of facility sometimes. Technology is there, but the commitment to the equipment is not there. Not like it was back in the 70s and 80s. When you put it in, it stayed. Now LED is great, but it's got a 10-year life cycle, give or take.
We have questions from Brian and Nathan. Were you finished, Byron?
I can definitely be done. I have one more, but I can come back
Go
around.
ahead.
Okay. There was one last one, and I think it'll be an easier one, which is just that I assume we're hiring on that open position that's...
In maintenance?
Yeah.
Actually, he starts Tuesday. He's internal.
Perfect. There you go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Gabe from Little Harbor. He's our internal candidate we're going to promote over to maintenance. We believe he's going to be a good fit, and he's got a broad range of miscellaneous things he's done over the years in property maintenance. Is what we need. We need kind of a jack of all trades.
Thank you.
Yep.
Brian?
Yeah, I always joke, I think you're like the most powerful man in Portsmouth, because like, when you show me all those graphs of like what's going on in the high school, I feel like I think you can shut off like all the HVAC systems and all the
I
lights.
can right now if you want me to, yes.
Right, with
But
your
we-
Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all web-based, but everybody has access, the supervisors, myself. So we have some redundancies.
So we
when
just
there's
hope you don't
certain
get hacked, and then we don't.
No, we had, knock on wood, IT's got some good firewalls.
That's good. Yeah, and as far as the position, it came up last 2 years. I mean, my knee-jerk reaction is like, do a worse job so you can hire more people to help you out. But part of it is we don't have a line of sight into like, what's the advantage to help Kenny? Like, what more could he be doing, with having this position, or what could we gain out of this?
Oh, that's fair.
Because part of it is, we want to make sure we're on top of our facilities. Want to make sure there's a plan. Even past some of these, like, it's sort of like, do we keep doing maintenance, or do we make the decision to push for capital expenditures? So I encourage you guys, if you want the board to act on any kind of thing like that, and I'm not asking for all the answers tonight, but just, it's one of those things is like, I could do so much more, and this is what it would be if I had a person help me, and we could save money. That's another thing, right? We could manage our money better, or our capital
Exactly.
better.
I mean, in twofold, it allows me to really efficiently focus on our capital, our growth, our schools as a whole. It's like me and the custodial supervisors. I can monitor them, but they take over the cleaning, and I don't have to monitor the cleaning. With the operational maintenance, I also got to monitor these 4 guys and their workloads and things as well. So looking in that position as that person shifts into that role and is trained for that role, they'll oversee and probably grow the growth of our maintenance throughout the district. I can only put so much on hand and then rely on my gentleman to see work and hopefully generate it as well, besides what we have identified throughout. This morning I was at the high school for 2.5 hours, creating a whole list of few things. However, that's the ultimate goal, is how do you get me out of that pickup truck? And I don't mind plowing, I don't mind salting, but it just makes it a longer day when you're in at midnight and you got to do that operational, and then you got to come to this desk and then shift into, some of these things are time restraints. The Little Harbor Playground, there's emails, there's things that we have to answer. New Franklin is starting to come off the ground, and there's 2 emails saved from the boring company, and we're looking at in February break. So it's, how do I balance that operational and personal life? How do I get back and sleep, or and take my time that I need? And I stress to my guys, it's called wellness time. How do we shut off, and how do we regroup? And so that's my challenges. As Brian earlier said, I left early today, and I thought you went home after that. No, I went back to the school and did this and that, and then I went home instead, because I just know there's some things that's kind of the focus, and we can elaborate in another discussion on fully what that role will be and how that'll work, but that's a good ballpark right there.
Yeah. No, I think, you couldn't rehire for this position.
Well, this is the,
That's the
well,
problem.
I think you also,
You can't leave, by the way.
but I think too, also having, starting to build that bench.
Yeah.
Exactly for the, I don't think you want to be in a position, Kenny is a young man, but he's been at this for a long time. And,
32 years.
and so you want to have, I think we are smart. We need to start building the bench, so that eventually Kenny loves this town and loves this community, but eventually Kenny should be allowed to retire. And I think we need to think about that in a responsible way.
Right. So I just had one other thing, just on the high school in general. I know we've done a lot of big capital projects on all the schools.
Yep.
Feels like the high school is now old, right? Compared to the other schools. So
Finished in 2004, 2005.
yeah. So You know, it'd be great, and probably not tonight, but at some
20
point,
years.
like, what does that look like? That's probably out further than what we have here, but it'd be nice to hear what, you know, what our plans are with that, and how that would dovetail with all the space use, utilization, and the demographics changing here in Portsmouth.
Yep.
So,
We can do that.
thank you.
Nathan?
Yeah, so I had a couple questions for you, Coach.
Sure.
So first one, it actually has nothing to do with what's in the binder. It's the doors at the high school. And it's sort of a random question, but you're here, so I figured I'd ask it. Some doors swing in, some doors swing out. If there's an optional underlying reason for that, then
Fire code.
okay.
It's all fire code, depends on how the usage of the room.
Okay.
Right, like, science classes have 2 doors, our classes have 2 doors that all swing in.
Yep.
But then you got the support services hallway where Brian Ryan is, that has to egress out based off all those little offices.
Yep.
So it all depends on the function of the room of the building code.
Okay. Cool. And then the second small one that I had was roof repairs at the high school, 6,500.
That's for just miscellaneous contractor to come in and do a patch here, patch there. We've had some stuff. We just did the full CPE area.
Yeah.
We're looking to jump in up above science this year, over towards that wing as well. And then there was one other spot as well. So we've been looking at doing whole
And I
areas
mean,
of
I guess
roof.
the question that comes with that is like, is that enough? I mean, from what I know, the roof at the high school is not in the best shape. And that it might be, and that's just
Overall, the roof's not in bad shape. It's
Yeah.
just now it's aged.
okay.
So now we look at, like I said, you can only patch so much, which I get, but then you also have to realize it's not Mother Nature also beating down on a roof. As much as we say, you'd be surprised of how much stuff seagulls and other bird drops things on the roof as well, and it gets a hole.
Yeah.
Also foot traffic, trying to keep our contractors and the certain pathways are not, and somehow they drop a screw, it happens unfortunately. But, those are the things we try to alleviate, and that's what our capital funding is. We're looking to spend roughly $500,000 this summer, again, on roofs, between the high school and a section at Dondero.
Cool. Thank you. And then one last thing, not to reiterate, and go in circles, but I agree with everything surrounding the assistant position, and I voiced my support of that over the past couple of years. I'd say pushing towards like capital expenditures in a way for me adds the connotation like, oh, maybe we can fit it in, you guys can figure it out. I feel like if it's something that we had here for you, and then went along that narrative of having this person would allow you to do this and allow them to do that, and also then the greater picture. So
Falls on
I like
efficiencies.
where we're going with that.
Nancy, did you have your
Yeah,
hand up?
I just want to say, Kenny, you are amazing. What would we do without
you.
you? You really are an incredible addition to our staff. You've been there a long time. You know the buildings, you know the athletic fields, you know.
What comes along with our crew, we
Yeah.
have a great crew in
Yeah.
custodial and facilities.
But what you accomplish is absolutely amazing. So thank you so much. And I don't know if people saw it, but in Seacoast Online, there was an article about how they were going to build athletic fields at Pease. There's a possibility they're going to build athletic fields at Pease. So I don't know if that would help or hurt you, but we may have additional.
For us, what it comes down is just, the grass usage, and the turf fields are great. We can, from sunrise to sunset to 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. Yes, they do get hot in the summer, and we try to limit that use. You can water them down if you want. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when you look at grass fields, they need rest. And when you have, in the fall, 6 varsity or 6 lacrosse teams between boys and girls. You got Seacoast lacrosse, you got track, javelin, and all them on the fields. Then we shut down the window for June, July, part of August, but we got all the summer camps that come in. And then we're trying to grow grass. And then we jump into fall, which
Of
we
all
jump.
the youth teams.
Then we jump into all the youth, football, soccer, Seacoast soccer, and all them. And the community field has helped us with the new turf field, and then there's second one they're building as well. But it's just, we can always use another field or two. Not only just those sports, but baseball and softball as well, and Little League.
Other questions? I had one question just about the CTE process, which is probably in the category of refresh my memory, but that's the way that we use that space is dictated by the hiring needs of the industry and companies in the community, right? So is there a process where we decide what types of classroom space we need, or do you know if there's going to be changes in terms of, you know, we don't really do the construction anymore, we've moved past architecture, but we still have other programs that are very popular with students and getting them really good jobs. So I was just curious if you know at this point yet, if there might be any shift in how we need to use that space in terms of the programs, not like the HVAC.
That might, exactly.
I was gonna say, in terms of the programming stuff, I think that's gonna be, coordination with, right now we have interim director, we'll be hiring for a permanent. Whoever that permanent director is, working with industry partners, and then bringing an architect to talk about.
We
what
then
does
we
this look
value
like.
what we have and where we want to move, and
No,
what is the future looking like?
Right.
You know, 20 years ago it was all construction, and I still believe construction needs to come back in some fashion. You know, and trades
ongoing.
is that. However, is it hospitality? Is it, you know, the bank? Is it nursing? Is it, you know, there's other growth areas as well. And I think as part of that architect review plan, then in the input that we see from the input that we get from staff and parents and teachers and all that is, I think will help grow in that direction of where the CTE is going to move forward. And based off what other school districts are doing as well.
And then just sort of piggybacking on Brian's question a little bit, but if we're looking at potential other needs for the whole high school, because it's just getting older,
Yeah.
is there a way to combine those processes? Because it feels like timing-wise, we might be looking at more than just CTE by the time we get to that. And I know those are different buckets of money that would deal with the rest of the building, but I don't know. I'm just curious if that's something that we're talking about at all.
Not, I mean, I think I think for us, what's been, at least for me, the kind of the thing on the horizon has been that CTE, the CTE renovation with the synergy with what we're trying to do with the, particularly the HVAC stuff, but in general, other things where we can create synergy between those two, that big project. My mind is not, I know Kenny has some ideas where mine is not, but I have not gone out beyond that horizon in terms of what's going to happen with the rest of that building per se.
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point,
Significantly.
I think when we have the budget cycle with the work session with city council, you know, we'll have that discussion as well.
Yep.
I think the CTE project is actually going to start peeling that open as we look at the mechanical upgrades into that area and try to enhance, like I said, the funding from the state throughout that area and try to piggyback in some of the areas as well as it is. When we put an air handler in auto shop, can that same air handler feed music in that area as well, which is a bigger bang for our buck as well. At that point, I think, you know, over the next year or two, you're going to see a new slide come out where it's going to talk about the high school and in those timelines of that and where we look at hiring an architect firm to come in and do an evaluation and get the feedback of where we are with the high school based off today's needs. As you know, back then we were built off technology. Everybody had computer rooms on the floors and all throughout. I think we have one now, if we're lucky, throughout that entire building. So how are we using the space? How can we better use the building? Are we ADA, life safety? You know, we continue to monitor those. So I think that's where that will start trending out in a couple of years, is then we slide into for the future of the renovations.
Well, that makes sense. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I was just going to say one other thing that we're having a little bit of conversation about is also about the potential relocation in the next several years, the relocation of our central office operation to the high school is another possibility. So we've had some beginning conversations about what would that look like and how would we be accessible to the public, not interfere, not hurt programming in terms of where we go. So that continues to be something that we're interested in doing.
Well, if there are no other questions, I will move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you, Kenny.
So, I think we had put this in here as a placeholder to make sure, budget workshop session topics. When we originally had designed the agenda, it was just to make sure we were communicating with staff to try to line up our next budget workshop sessions. I know you've given me a bunch of stuff that we could look to build from that. So maybe we don't need to have any further conversation, or maybe it'd be good for folks to.
So I would say at this point, if anyone on the board has things that they would like to explore, it would be good to know so that we can talk about it in our agenda planning meeting this week and get a sense of what would be the top priority for folks. We're obviously going to have a conversation about special education. I believe we've had mostly questions related to that so far. We've had some questions about whether there's any way to start to take a peek at whether we know where we have invested money through our strategic plan. Have we seen a certain amount of change and outcomes in any way? And it's obviously very early. The plan is in its first few years, but if there's any preliminary way to show outcomes from that, there was interest in that. I don't know if anyone has anything they want to pipe up with now, or you can continue to email me and Brian this week, but it's definitely helpful to be able to give staff as much heads up as possible. Takes a lot of work to plan these presentations and a lot of time to check everything and button it down. So we try not to spring things on people, 72 hours before we need to summon them into the room. So if there's anything right this minute, go for it, and if not, feel free to follow up by email. I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, sorry, Byron.
I don't know if it's really a topic, but it was something there's the mandatory report to voters on school expenses, like that information, and I was looking at those charts, and one thing that was interesting was there's the average cost per pupil, there's the administrator salaries, and there's the average teacher salary. And I was just, while I was looking at those, I thought it would be interesting to know the total teacher salary over time, because the administrator salary isn't the average administrator salary, it's like just a total number.
Right.
And so that was a number I was looking for.
Okay.
It's sort of over whatever since 2016, what the total spend on educators is, I guess, is the request.
Yep, we can work on that.
I shared with Lisa, the one piece of information that would help me understand the budget better would be if I could have class numbers by grade level and also middle school and high school. So I appreciate what you've done in terms of creating the budget to try to reduce positions in some places so that when we add, it's less of an impact. And if we could have those class sizes per grade level, that would be really helpful for school.
I had just made the suggestion last year where the council was so concerned about our out-of-district placement costs being so high. If we, as a board, could just know why we have so many and how much each costs. Obviously, you can't give specific names or conditions, but if you could say, you have two students that are court-ordered, and that costs blah, 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 and then you have two students that have severe behavioral situations, and so they have to be out of district. If we had a better understanding of what that was, I think then we could convey it to the council, and they would know. Everyone would understand why it's the number that it is.
Well, and I'm curious if we can find out by general disability, why are these children being placed out of district based on the disability? Also, is there litigation involved? What's that cost look like? So those are some questions that I would like to know.
I think those are good questions, and any other questions related to that, we'd really love to see. Zach did consult with our outside education attorneys, Wadley Starr, and I checked with the New Hampshire School Board Associations because we're trying to thread the needle of how much can we know and what can we get in terms of detail without compromising student privacy, which we are legally required to protect, and I also think it's just the right thing to do. So given we have about 17, 18 students total right now that are out of district, so it can get tricky in some situations to drill down with too much detail in a public meeting without everybody in town sort of knowing who those students are. So I would just say we're going to be as transparent as we possibly can. I think that the ask for that came through loud and clear last year and again this year. But just for the public, we need to make sure that we're protecting student privacy.
Absolutely. And if there's something sealed, how do we get Are we allowed to see that information if things are sealed through litigation? Because I know there's some cases, like, maybe that would be interesting to see.
Well, I mean, we can work on, to whatever extent, through counsel, you know, through legal counsel, whatever we can make transparent to you, we'll make transparent.
Great,
So,
awesome.
So I would say any other requests, whether it's on special ed or anything else, please get it to us, and we will definitely do our best to get those into the agenda. You had more in your report, though. Do you want to go on to the next?
yeah, most of this is for folks who are new. Some of these items are kind of pro forma items that appear in each. You always will get a summary of emails, although these are emails that you should have received yourself, that can't come in through the district website. People have the ability to go through a portal and send a message to the board. You always will get a summary of what those are, partially for you, but also partially for the public to know that those messages have been received. You receive a list of overnight field trips that have been approved. We've had conversations in the past. Former board member was like, "Are we supposed to be approving those?" And it's like, no. But we wanted to make sure there's notification. And my understanding is that at one time, you know, like a lot of things, something happened. The board was unaware of the fact there was going to be overnight field trip, and so it became practice. This is something that we do regularly. And then we also included, not pro forma, we also included just a memo. We had conversation when we did our last update in our December meeting around policy JBAB, which shifted kind of how things operate in relation to communication with parents, and specifically our old JBAB. Under the old policy, we were in a spot where students would able to be basically share with staff members if they had identified themselves as transgender or non-cis or anything along those lines, that they had protection from that being revealed without their permission to home. The law changed, and so we went through a lot of policy conversation, a lot of conversation with attorneys, brought in stakeholders to have dialogue, trying to figure out how are we compliant with the law while simultaneously respectful of students at the same time. Ultimately, we came to the new policy, and then the request was, let's make sure the policy will not go into effect until January 1st, and let's make sure that we are informing students of that policy change. So this was just an explanation of what were the steps that were taken to inform students, and what we do leading up to the break. I will, at the middle school and the high school, that was with direct kind of conversation with students. At the elementary grades, we informed parents that this was the case, and we asked them to have conversations with their students. We didn't feel we had a better approach to that per se. So that's where things were at. We just wanted to make sure the board was aware that this is what we had done to try to comply with that directive.
Thank you. Moving on to.
So then you got a letter of resignation. This is not one that you need to take action on. This is.
Can we reject it?
We can't.
right.
We can't reject it.
Such a good teacher.
Cannot reject it, unfortunately. But Mr. Finney, who had taught at New Franklin School in kindergarten, he had been on his second year. The maximum amount of time you can. He had a 1-year leave. Then he had taken a second year last year, and the board extended it. This is the end of the time where he could still continue to have a landing place back with us, and let us know that his intention is that he won't be in a position to return in the fall. So this is more a matter of just letting the board, making sure the board was aware, but you don't need to take any action on this particular item. And we wish Mr. Finney the best. If we do wish that was not the case. So.
Okay. Old business, and in Trip's absence, I will throw Byron under the bus to try to explain these policies to us. But we have one that we need to consider approving and one that we need to consider rescinding. Do we want to take those together or separately?
Let's go in order and maybe we'll do them separately.
Okay, then can we have please a motion to consider approval of, where's my number? IK, I can't read anymore.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Would you care to kick off the discussion, Byron?
Sure. So IK, as I can remember it, was it combined several other policies, which is why we're looking to rescind IKAA. And the next item on the agenda, the policy is around the ways in which students can earn high school credit. We talked about this in the last meeting when we approved first reading around different definitions of competencies and learning opportunities to achieve those competencies and how those things were assessed. So that's essentially the context around IK. Patty, keep me honest here. Thank you.
Yep, just nodding, yep.
Yeah, and then IKAA, just to look ahead a little bit, was a specific policy on interdisciplinary credit, but that now is part and parcel to IK.
Any discussion on IK? Seeing nobody, can we have a roll call vote in case we have Tish still on Zoom there?
Yes. Brian French,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Jennifer Shump,
Yes.
Stephen Adler,
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Approved.
All right, I'll move then to rescind policy IKAA. Looking for a second?
Second,
All right.
discussion, or you want to explain any more about it than you already did?
The above, I suppose. Yeah.
So basically, this is already rolled into the policy we just passed. Right. So we now don't want to have a duplicate that is contradictory in any way, so we would like to rescind. There. Seeing no discussion, we need a roll call vote on this too, please, Patty?
Byron Maddow,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Jennifer Shump,
Yes.
Stephen Adler.
Yes.
Passed.
Okay. We now move on to new business and the highlight of our first budget workshop of the year.
The envelope,
We are
please.
required to have somebody randomly selected to serve on the ethics committee for the city. In a perfect year, there are no issues and you never meet, but it is a requirement for people from all of the boards across the city to
Yeah, it's
be part of
five-member,
that. Yep.
five-member committee, 2 from the city council, and then 1 from the police commission, 1 from the fire, and 1 from us. And it's only called into effect if there's an ethics complaint against an elected official.
So we have everybody's name helpfully added into the envelope. Who would we like to throw under the bus to draw the name?
No, Ian Walker's not here. I'll take
I know,
it.
right? Ed Walker's not here.
One of my all-time
She got
favorite
it.
moments on the board.
Several years.
Your
I
name
know.
is
Surprise.
mine, is the exact quote when I pulled her name that time. Okay, this year's lucky winner for the Board of Ethics is Nancy Claiberg.
Oh,
Very good.
So,
Thank you. Congratulations, Nancy. Okay. So next up, we have school board committee assignments. We are not taking any action on that tonight. The committees, as they have been running for the last few years, are all in the packet. Brian and I have asked you all to email us by Friday of this week with your top choices. And one thing I would say that we'd really like to try to button down a bit more is if you're on a committee and you pick it and then you figure out the meeting time doesn't work for you, please let us know. We will swap it out. We want to have a presence on these committees. If you're sick and you email the whole board to let us know that you can't go, we try to see if somebody else can get there instead of you, just so we continue to have a presence. And if something changes in your life, same goes. I will also say that we are having a few discussions that we would ultimately bring to the whole board to consider about potentially eliminating some committees because we're not sure if we still need them. One we were considering was potentially the Teaching and Learning Committee, which Brian and I have served on and I think has been fantastic in terms of a source of information. That has been something Patty's been spearheading to keep us updated on how curriculum mapping and improvements to the instruction have been going as part of our strategic plan. And since we don't take any action as a board, we wondered if that might be something that might be better to present to the whole board so that everybody has that overview. I'm also having some preliminary conversations with Zach about whether we want to kind of reconsider exactly what the mission of the legislative committee is so that we can make sure that the time that goes into that is having the most impact in Concord. And I don't know, were there any other committees we were thinking about shuffling around too much? Those were the two that I know we've.
Those are the two we talked about.
But if you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, the future school building needs committee, which we had we had the conversation about. I think one of the things that we thought might be a good idea was just to roll that into facilities.
I
Yeah.
think that I think you did ask me about that, and that's
Okay.
another one that we can discuss. I
yeah.
think for some of these committees, because way back when they were started, in some cases, the motion to create the committee specified a mission.
Yeah.
We might have to just take a vote as a board to say we are either disbanding this or we are rolling it into this other committee, just so that it's clear
Yeah.
that what was approved previously is being changed.
Okay.
But I will make a note of that. I think you already told me that, and I just didn't have it here. So we will get those, hopefully, requests from everyone by Friday, and then we'll meet and do our best to give everybody at least one or two of their top choices and try not to throw you on anything you really didn't want to do. Everybody usually serves on at least one negotiating committee because there's a lot of them. The good news is we don't have any big contracts up this year. Yes.
I have a question about the negotiating committees.
Yes, sir.
Which is that I got invited, I feel like, randomly to like all of the different it was very confusing to me, the calendar scheduling and invites and like which ones I was on. And I don't know if that was just like administration or
I'll follow up with you on
Yeah.
that.
I do not know.
Yeah, because I remember maybe not being assigned specific ones. No, I was on cafeteria, but then I was getting ones for it was confusing.
Sorry about that.
I'll sit with you and we'll
That
figure
seems
out
solvable.
what the backtrack it.
So we will have on an agenda soon to kind of go over we'll give you the committee assignments, and then we may need to take a vote at a meeting upcoming soon if we need to change some of the committee structures a little bit. And if you requested a committee that we're eliminating or changing, you can certainly have the opportunity to let us know if there's something else you want to do or that changes your thinking. So any other questions on committees? Yes.
If there's committees where no one signed up, can you just let us know that you're still looking for people in those
Oh,
committees?
don't you worry.
Not that I'm volunteering for any, but I just wanted to know.
I think, what would you say, Nancy? We would like to sit up here and we will look really woefully around the room until somebody raises their hand. It's quite fun. But usually we have enough different interests and enough different schedules that we can cover most of the committees.
Great.
But yes, we will let you know, don't worry. I think we can move on from that if there is nothing else. And we next up have to vote to unseal some non-public minutes. And I can take a stab at explaining this, but I feel like we've got a good...
Yeah, I'm happy to quickly. Based on current law, you need to review you need to review minutes that have been sealed effectively every 10
Every 10 years, yep.
And you do a review to make sure that there's an ongoing need to continue to seal the minutes. We met in non-public session earlier to have a discussion about those minutes, and I believe that the proper motion is we took it in two parts. One would be to continue to seal a few minutes that we talked about, and then to unseal several others. I think probably that's the right way, do one motion on one and one motion on the other. And so the minutes, based on the conversation, if you've got them, go ahead.
So we have, I'll start with the ones we're going to keep sealed.
Yep.
And just so that everybody's aware of the law here, there are certain circumstances where it would be causing reputational harm, or it involves disclosing confidential student or personnel issues that we are legally required to keep them sealed. In our review, we found 2 sets of minutes that met that standard, so I will make a motion to continue to seal the minutes from September 5th, 2018, which were related to a hearing on a school assignment, and to continue to seal the minutes from April 5th, 2023, which were also related to a student school placement decision. Can I get a second on that? And we need a roll call vote, please.
Yep. Byron Matto,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Jennifer Shump,
Yes.
Stephen Adler,
Yes.
6-0 passed.
Okay. And then we have a second, much larger batch of minutes that when we reviewed in non-public, we did not find any identifying information of students or personnel or any evidence that it would cause reputational harm. So following the law, we would now recommend unsealing those. Do I have to read all the dates? I probably do.
I would do it, yeah.
Okay, so we are going to unseal the minutes from the following meetings. And I'm making a motion, I'll need a second after we're done with the long laundry list. January 12th, 2016, which was a discipline discussion. August 8th, 2017, which was a personnel discussion. January 18th, 2022, which was related to personnel. September 19th, 2022, also personnel. January 21st, 2022, related to personnel. January 24th, 2022, related to personnel. Another meeting on the same day, January 24th, 2022, also related to personnel. January 25th, 2022, related to personnel. January 26th, 2022, related to personnel. January 27th, 2022, related to personnel. And September 30th, 2025, related to personnel. Did I miss any? I think
Nope,
I
I
got
think you're
them
good.
all.
Yep.
So I need a second to that laundry list. I won't make you read the list.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion of that? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Byron Matto,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Jennifer Shump,
Yes.
Stephen Adler,
Yes.
passed.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. Next, we are going to move on to consideration and approval of policies for first reading. And Byron, I will request your institutional knowledge to explain some of these for us, please.
Okay, I'll do my best here. So I guess look for a motion to pass first reading of policy ACA around discrimination and harassment grievance procedure.
So moved.
For a second.
A second.
Thank you. So, trying to jog my memory on ACA.
That was a legal requirement.
This was so I can explain a little bit about
Thank you.
ACA. ACA is the twin or the sister or brother policy to ACAC, which is the Title IX policy. Title IX policy, there was some back and forth with the law back last January when the new administration came into Washington, and there was a legal decision out of the Eastern District Court of Kentucky that suspended the use of the Title IX rule under the Biden administration, reverting to the 2020 Title IX rule that was put into place. So we had to revert all of our policies. When we reverted all of our policies, including our Title IX policy, policy ACA was rescinded without there being another one to replace it. The one came out from the School Board Association to replace it, which is this one, which got lost somewhere in the shuffle that needs to now be voted on. And the recommendation at Policy Committee was to suspend the rules to pass this on a single reading so that we could use this for any of the disciplinary situations that might be coming up that could apply under harassment or discrimination that are not raising to the level of a Title IX discrimination or harassment need. That was a lot.
Can we make a friendly amendment to consider passing this in a single reading from our original motion?
Yeah, because it says first.
Right, yeah, I agree with that.
Are you both okay with making that
Did I
friendly
make the
amendment?
motion?
No, Brian made the motion and
Sorry,
Steve.
I've already lost track.
I agree with it. It's
Okay.
fine with me.
Steve?
That's fine.
Okay,
Yes.
so we're gonna do single read.
Okay. Any additional discussion of this one? Nancy?
So Patty, basically what you're saying is we have to have this policy on our books, and right now we don't have this policy on our books.
Yes.
And effectively, it's a return of the books. So it's
A return to the
so it's a. I think that makes it okay for a single
Right.
read situation because
It's coming back.
substantively returns. It also reflects what our practice is already on the ground, anyways.
Yes.
So.
Seeing no other hands, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Byron Matto,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Jennifer Shump,
Yes.
Stephen Adler.
Yes.
Passed.
All right, so I'll keep going. So IKF, I just, maybe Patty, you have this in front of you. Do we also have this as single read for IKF? Or are we just gonna do first reading here?
So for IKF, this is first read.
Okay, so.
Yeah, first read.
So I just, if I'm remembering correctly, IKFA, these ones that we're eliminating on agenda item E are rolling into IKF. Is
Correct.
that accurate? Okay.
Yep.
So maybe we should punt on the elimination of, or table, sorry, on the agenda item E when we get there, because this would be a single, or the first reading. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay.
Take a motion to suspend the rules and take care of these other batch of policies first and then go back to that?
So this other batch of policies is just eliminations, but we can't eliminate until we pass IKF.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I think we're going to need to table that when we get there. So looking for a motion to pass first reading of IKF.
So moved.
So, second,
So just a quick primer on IKF. It's similar to IK. Instead of it rolling up credit rules, this is graduation requirement rules, but it's similar in terms of trying to consolidate a whole bunch of spread out policies on the subject.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Were there any changes in terms of the courses that were required, that were listed in this policy from the prior policies?
So the number of credits, we are now offering the minimum 20 credit diploma, which is what's listed in this policy. The number of courses is not what the policy covers. It's talking about credits for graduation. So it looks at credits as opposed to courses.
Right, but Steve, I got what you're asking, because that was going to be my question too. Like, is there even how they list it, are there differences in the requirement?
Yeah, because it was 26 and now it's 20, so.
We did have, though, previously, our current policy. So if you look at our current policy, which talks about graduation requirements, does have 20 credit diploma in there.
Right, and that's why it's already 20.
Right. But what the difference is not, again, not the number of credits, but it's all of the other language that's in here. It's substantially much more robust policy now, because those policies that are listed in Section E, when they eventually are eliminated, they're already subsumed into the new and improved IKF.
Right.
So, Steve, you can see the ones that are lined out in there,
Yeah,
the policy. Those were the old classes in there.
but then there's a table that's very similar
Yeah.
with that state graduation credit requirements, and then there's a second table, graduation credit requirements for students entering ninth grade starting 26, 27. So that's what I was, and that's what I was referring to.
Oh, okay, yeah, so, right, they're shifted around a little bit as far as content area, but the courses that those credits are gonna come from are not specified in the policy.
Well, I meant content areas.
Okay, yep.
So there was a shifting of some content areas?
There is a shift coming with the incoming ninth graders starting this coming school year in September.
Oh, I'm sorry, can you just explain that, what that shift was?
Sure, so if you look at, for instance, the English credits, the top table talks about 4 credits. The table below with the incoming ninth graders is 3.5 credits, and half of those credits have to be from writing. So that's one example. There are multiple examples like that. There is quite a bit of difference in like the social studies area with economics, world history, New Hampshire history, the number of credits or the amount of credits being taken and how those are distributed is also shifted around a little bit.
I just, the other thing that's in here is, that's materially different is the passage of the U.S. citizenship test.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I just want to call that out. Previously, it was just the civics exam, but now I think it's a requirement of a 70 or better, essentially, is the passing of the U.S. citizenship test. And that's from the RSA directly.
Yep.
And some of this is reflective of a trend that we're seeing in the legislature where it's starting to inject itself into, like civics was something where the legislature injected itself and said, this is something everybody's going to have to take. So there's a little bit more, financial literacy, I think, was similar.
Yep.
So there's, and that's kind of a newer trend out of Concord. So we'll see whether or not that continues, where they start prescribing courses that have to be taken from the legislature, basically, asking the Department of Education to come to conclusions independent of the political process about what needs to happen. And instead, the legislature voting on the floor that this is a class thou shalt take. So it'll be interesting to see if that trend continues, but it has had an impact on this.
Logic and rhetoric is another example of something that incoming ninth graders are going to have some sort of evidence of a half a credit of that. Where that's going to happen is something that the high school is working on right now, trying to assign where all of these things are going to be happening. And we're already starting a lot of competency work with that, so.
Symbolic logic was my favorite class ever. So.
Was that your question, Nathan, or did you have another?
Patty
question?
literally just stole the words right out of my mouth.
There you go.
Awesome.
I might have a piggyback question on that, but is there going to be a point where the high school provides students with information on if you did want to, say, take that civics exam, like how do you do that if you don't take the civics? Like if you take the citizenship test, you have to take a class, or can you just take the test?
What they're trying to do in order to get students to pass, and right now, the last time I spoke to Mrs. Chisholm, we've got everybody passing, is they're trying to have students take the test as close to the time that they finish the course as possible.
Gotcha.
So that they can pass the test. It's not a typical, like the science SAS test that you can only take it at one time of year. They're trying to make sure that the test is queued up so that you just had the content taught to you. You've got a high probability of passing it so that you don't have to come back and take it again.
Okay.
So they're trying to align things very closely.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Any other?
Should we have the board take that test sometime?
Would be fun.
We'll live score it, Nancy.
Would be fun.
Sounds fun.
Well, the scores do get right back to you, so.
They do.
Who made the motion on that one?
That was Brian and then Nancy.
I believe we are ready for a vote.
Yeah.
Okay. Byron Maddow.
Yeah.
Brian French.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Nancy Clayberg.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Jennifer Shump.
Yes.
Stephen Adler.
Yes.
Passed.
So then, I think if I misunderstood the question, now I've got it. We need to table the next batch until the policy that we just passed on first reading comes back for second reading.
Yes,
So that we don't leave us with no policy in the interim.
Yeah, so I'll
Sorry,
move
I've
to,
got my wires crossed on that.
I'll move to table under new business E 1, 2, and 3.
Second.
Okay, so we've got move to table from Byron. Second was Brian. Okay.
And then we need a roll call.
Yep. Jennifer Shump.
Yes.
Stephen Adler.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Nancy Clayberg.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Okay, passed.
Thank you. Next up is our policy subcommittee proposal. And I would welcome a description of that, but I also would say I wonder if the board would be willing to table that until we come back with our full committee proposal so that we can take them all together.
Yeah.
If there are no urgent needs to do that, then I would ask for a motion to table that as well.
Yeah, move to table F under new business.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Jennifer Shump.
Yes.
Stephen Adler.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport. Nancy Clayberg.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Passed.
Thank you. All right, next up under new business, we're back to Byron. And I just want to call out in the agenda, this is something I'm hoping that we'll be able to do more, but Byron gave us ahead of time what the sample motion would be, as well as a map we could see to understand what the ask is and the background on why we have the ask. That is, I think, extremely helpful for us and for the public to understand when we're trying to take up things like this. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Yeah.
And I will let you speak to whatever you would like to speak to, but first, can I have a motion? Would you like to make your motion?
Yeah, if I knew I was going to see so much action tonight, I would address it better, I think. Sure, I'll move to request that the superintendent modify the elementary school district map to include the Lafayette Plaza Shopping Center, the old WHEB property, and surrounding wetlands as part of the Little Harbor Elementary School District. And there is a map, which obviously I spent a ton of time crafting, showing, just in layman's terms, I mean, it's where Harbor Freight is, and there's the new apartments going in. We're all familiar with that. And that's the motion, yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, and then, so just a little bit of background. You know, we went through a redistricting process. Part of that redistricting process was moving students, or looking to move students over time from Dondero, Ketchman, to Little Harbor, as that's where the population growth has been. This is a proactive move, as those apartments are not online yet, and they're just logically placed on the map already next to Little Harbor District, so it's a simple move we can do now to get ahead of any potential students that might come out of that development.
Any questions or discussion?
I have something. I was wondering if we could add the Sage condominiums to that, which is the complex where the movie theater used to be at McKinnon's and Water Country. It's next to Water Country. Those are completed. I believe people are starting to move in. And I was just wondering, you know, to try to balance our schools, to try to get more students to Little Harbor, would it, and I know Zach, I talked to Zach about it briefly, and he thought it needed some more examination, but I think that's I don't know. Zach, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think what I can't answer right now is the kind of the logistical transportation issues that could be connected with having an enclave inside of that elementary district. So we do some of that right now with Osprey, but what that leads to is effectively we have a single bus that is an Osprey bus. So I think I would want to do a little bit. I understand the timeliness of trying to, if we're going to make a move, we want to do it as soon as possible on a property that could have people in it, that could send kids to the district. But I think we would need to do some further exploration of the logistics connected with potentially having a bus that would run out of the normal cycle to get just that property.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we're gonna, I think, you know, where this is geographically makes this easier to reason about. I don't know if I think, yeah, I agree with Zach on that. I think a little deeper discussion. I think before we start moving pieces from inside of the boundaries of something, we might consider the edges, though we know that's fraud as well. But maybe keeping this particular motion simple. Yeah.
I'm just curious what the cost analysis is of continuing to have the modular classrooms versus like the bus.
Yeah, I don't, like if we ran a separate,
Numbers.
so if we, well, one, I don't know, our modeling would tell us that running a separate bus for that property, well, our modeling would tell us that property is not going to have a lot of kids in it. And if we use the Veridian right beside it as the model, we'll get a few students. So I think, well, I would say, you know, my normally cautious me would be like, well, if we went back and did the analysis, we have to go do the analysis. But I think what we would anticipate is there wouldn't be enough students to justify running a bus just for that location. So we'd have to work out how are we transforming the rest of our network of busing to try to reflect that. We do the cost for the upcoming year for our lease connected to the modulars, Brian?
46,000.
46,000. So I don't know. So that's as much as I can tell you right now.
I think a lot of that complex too is market rate, like maybe 1 and 2 bedrooms, which doesn't mean we wouldn't get anybody with kids, but it would be
Especially
a
with the cost of
relatively
housing
expensive space to
Right.
go with children relative to some other options in Portsmouth.
I just looked at the max size, it's
did you?
1,000
Sorry.
square feet.
It's not big.
We did
And that's
900 with my
what,
crew.
2.5?
Well, and that's,
It was fun.
and I think, and I mean, this is all, when we went through redistricting, this was the conversation we had, is that
Yeah.
developers, you know, the types of properties the developers want to bring online in order to hit their, you know, make their numbers work are 1 to 2 bedroom properties. And those generally do not create, you know, students that are going to attend our schools. And I think the example we've used, in those who've been on the board for a while, we've talked about a bunch, but it was the West End Yards. All those units came online, and in the first 2 years, we ended up with 1 student that came out of all the Kate Street condos and all of the rental stuff at West End Yards, 1 student.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, I think, and I've said this before, but I think I think adding overall units to the system has the potential to increase the number of students in the system. I think it's not necessarily true that where that development is happening is where those students will be, right? So if those are opening up, maybe folks who are later in life to move from a single-family home in Maple Haven
Right.
Into one of those units, maybe Maple Haven is growing in their density of young families, right? So I think it's
Yeah, and you can see, and yeah, and I think that's the thing that I think for us to watch. I think we
Yeah.
have some suspicions that over time you could see as those other units come online, exactly what you're talking about, that could free up more standalone properties in Elwyn and in Maple Haven as locations where people might come in with families.
Yeah, I think what's easy about this is just where it is.
Right.
I think it's as simple as that on that. Yeah.
But I think all of it, I mean, the thing is always is going to be to what extent does behavior change?
Yeah.
You know, and we're going to have to keep monitoring as time goes on,
Absolutely.
you know, whether or not that evolves.
And one of the conversations with the committee assignments was whether we want to combine looking at the future needs with facilities so that we can be kind of constantly having that conversation and then have committee submit recommendations to the board on what they think after that analysis we should be doing with those new developments. So we are trying to keep an eye on all those pieces. So this could certainly be one that group could, once we
Yeah.
sort out all of our committee assignments, take a look at. There's a lot more out Route 1 too.
Yes.
And the Christmas tree shop and
Yep.
the Commerce Way, if that's going to be developed, so,
Yep.
yeah.
I'm pulling for IKEA apartments.
Wow, yeah.
Yes, you can just walk right into IKEA,
Nice.
finish it,
I
and
like
be
it.
done.
Yeah, that's great.
That's just a rumor.
I know, that's what I heard too.
All right. So are we ready to take a vote on this, or is there any other discussion on the motion? Roll call, please, Patty.
Byron Maddow,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes,
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Jennifer Shump,
Yes.
Stephen Adler,
Yes.
passed.
Thank you. So we have committee updates, links to 2 policy committee meetings in the packet. I don't know if there's anything that anyone would like to speak to around those, or any other committee updates that anyone would like to provide. It's usually a quiet time of year for committees.
I just appreciate the ongoing policy committee being very regular in terms of the submission of minutes for folks. That's really helpful. So thank you, policy committee.
All right. Future agenda requests. One more chance to speak up about that. Oh, go ahead.
I don't even know if this falls under this, but I guess I can try and
Go
twist
right
it.
ahead.
I can twist it.
Okay, we're ready.
So, this is more a question for you, Zach. They got a lot from students with the 2-hour delay.
Yeah.
Confusion surrounding how that's conveyed out to students rather than just parents, because it's to my knowledge, no student got the email, let alone the voicemail and call.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of like, well, my dad didn't wake me up till
Gotcha.
he woke me up regularly, and then I was up 4 hours, before I needed to be.
Yeah.
Silly stuff. But to that end, how they can, get that.
It's interesting. So that came out of a previous complaint about younger kids being notified about stuff. And so that was a switch operationally.
Okay.
And it was part of that, one of those complaints came from a board member. So anyway, so that was part of the shift where when we make those announcements, then we are selecting staff, families, and guest partners, people who like the library, the librarians and the rec and people, but we leave students off because there are some students at they would be like middle school level. I don't know. That was a concern before. I'm happy to bring that back.
Okay.
Hypothetically, in my house, the parents would greatly appreciate if the kids got the alert
Yeah,
at 5:30 in the morning. That
Right.
would be awesome, and then
They
I
all
would
fall
stay
asleep. Well,
asleep.
I'm not going to say all, but most of them have their phones right on their
That is-
bedside. So
I wish that was not true, but
right, but
maybe for high school, like you could
Well,
look at whether that's feasible.
can you not?
You
can't
can't separate it out
Oh,
unless you run
Okay.
well,
don't wanna
it's
wake
labor
up the
intensive.
kindergarten kids
So-
at 5 a.m.
So it's like
Yeah, it's just
either you're in for students or you're out. Kind of.
I mean, I'd say students should be getting them.
Yeah.
So.
Lisa, can we, at the next meeting, can we have a principal search update? High school principal search update?
Yep, we can do that.
Any other? All right. I will reopen public comment for all of the people watching us in the room here, since we do not do that on Zoom at this point in the meeting. Seeing Nobody? We'll now close public comment. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We need a roll call for that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
Trish is hanging in this whole
Jennifer
time.
Shump,
Yes.
Pip Clues, not here, sorry, Stephen Adler,
Yes.
Byron Maddow,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Lisa
No,
Rappaport,
I wasn't.
Nancy Clayberg,
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
passed.
Thank you, everybody.
You actually are.